Investors, welcome back to Green Money Momentum. I'm your host, Trevor, and we are here for Friday's daily talk of stock. And when we talk about market movements, making money, and money momentum, not really too much to talk about today because we had a pretty flat day overall in the market. So as we could see by the heat map here on screen, we had a lot of plays just push forward. So we had Nvidia, they did not drop by even a percent point. Microsoft didn't move by a percent either. The same to be said with Apple, Amazon, Tesla, and so many more companies within the markets. But this is completely okay with me. And I do expect for the tickers to continue to remain pretty flat leading up to the big FOMC meeting this Wednesday, either more bullish or flat, just like we had today, because the markets are really focused on what the Federal Reserve is going to do this next week. But today wasn't really a bad day by any means. Although as bulls, we all like to see our portfolios rise and gain significant value. As long as the markets aren't trailing down, I am not upset, because as we could see by both of the major indexes, the candlesticks that we got show that neither the bulls or bears made a significant push today, kind of a standstill. But again, that is okay, because overall sentiment is more bullish right now. We did see on the fear and greed index recently, we were all the way at a reading of just 6. And so many were expecting for the whole world to end, right? The ultimate market collapse. But as we could see, we are having a recovery on that fear and greed index as well as the market. So we have started to see a bounce back. We have had a lot of strong green days in succession, and that is once again because investors are looking at what the Federal Reserve is going to do in 4 days. So next Wednesday on December 10th, the next big FOMC meeting. Right now, there is an 87% projection that the Fed does cut, and I do believe they will do so. Today, we did have numbers for the PCE index. So this is for inflation. And just as this reads right here, we did cool slightly. So this is a positive, because what the Federal Reserve is looking for is to maximize employment and have stable prices, right? That is their dual mandate. So as we can see, prices are looking stabilized, at least when it comes to these measurements, such as the PCE. And this also talks about the jobs market. And recently, we did see with the recent labor reports that the job market is weakening. So again, the Federal Reserve wants to maximize employment while keeping stable prices. So when we talk about the macros, everything right now is looking positive. Inflation is looking good. When it comes to the Federal Reserve, they are looking dovish right now, most likely doing their next rate cut here on December 10th. And right now also, everything around the tariffs is looking positive. Now, there is a little bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because right now the Supreme Courts are looking at the tariffs. Some are thinking that the Supreme Courts are going to rule these as unconstitutional. And there is a crazy theory that if the Supreme Court does that, that the Trump administration and the government is going to have to send all this money back to all these different countries, and all the progress we have made this last year with tariffs is going to be wiped out. And I don't see that happening by any means. I think that this is just some short-term fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and is really ridiculous, because when you really think about it, the United States government holds all this power across the world because of the strength of the US dollar. Even with the US dollar losing so much value through the years, it's still the world's reserve currency. And so if the Supreme Court does rule these tariffs as unconstitutional and the United States has to send back all of these dollars, I think that this could absolutely shoot all the confidence in the US dollar, the last bit of confidence that other countries do have within this currency, because America is leveraged with this world's reserve currency, as all we send to other countries is paper, and they send us actual products. And so If these tariffs go through, this will be very unreasonable. And then the United States having to send back all this money would only devalue the currency even more. And by no means am I expecting for this to happen. If this were to happen, this would have bigger implications on the Federal Reserve than the actual president. And you know how Trump is. If they do rule these as unconstitutional, well, he could put all the blame on the Supreme Court and those who ruled against this. But again, if they were ruled unconstitutional, this would have major implications for the whole world. And I believe that this is nothing to be concerned about. With that being said, we're going to talk about some of my favorite risk assets currently within the market, because yes, I do believe that the Federal Reserve will cut here on the 10th, and the Federal Reserve really is going into a much larger cycle of quantitative easing, which is going to be massive for the markets and for all these small market cap stocks, all these technology plays, and all these assets that we talk about on this channel. So we're going to start out here with SoundHound AI. This is one of my favorite stocks currently on the market. I really believe in what this company is doing, and it's been a while since I've talked about SoundHound AI. I didn't mean for it to be that way, but there is always just so much to talk about within the markets, and recently things have been pretty flat with SoundHound. But most recently, we have seen an opportunity present for us as we have fallen all the way back down to the 200-day moving average. And for this year, basically since Liberation Day, we have been in this rising level of support and resistance with SoundHound. So in October, we did get a bit overvalued there, and SoundHound did crash like the rest of the market. But now we are just right under this level of rising support on this trend that we have been on since April. So, you know, trends are meant to be broken. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will return back to this trend just because we have fallen slightly under it. But I do believe that the other technical indicators do show that this could be a likely result, that we do return back to this bullish trend that we have been seeing, because recently we fell significantly on the relative strength index, and also we did just see a bullish cross on the MACD. And if you saw my video yesterday, I was talking all about this exact pattern. This is my favorite pattern to play within the markets, and when I like to make long-term investments, this is usually exactly what I am looking for a moment when the entire markets have sold off and that individual play is sold off and has came down significantly on the candlesticks and is low on the relative strength index and on the MACD, right? This is kind of like the three amigos here. And when one amigo is at a different spot than another amigo, right? Say we were super high on the relative strength index, but low on the MACD. I would say that this is not the three amigos. Or let's say that we were going flat on the candlestick chart, low on the RSI, high on the MACD. You know what I'm saying? Basically, all three of these indicators not lining up. That is when I am cautious. But when all three do line up together, this is when I say that these are the three amigos working together for us. And I really do love SoundHound, because this right here is a small market cap stock and can have a crazy run up. So in 2025 or 2024, man, I'm thinking all the way to 2026 already. But in 2024, we were talking about SoundHound when it was just at $4, and we saw a massive rip up all the way to $20 at one point. And it happened so quick that many investors were not able to catch it. And that is because, again, it is a small market cap stock, so just 5.38 billion on the market cap, and there are only 387 million shares outstanding. Not a crazy float by any means, but then this is crazy right here, and that is the percent of the float that is being shorted. So there is a 30% short interest on SoundHound AI. This is wild to me. This shows that a lot of shorts are betting against this company. And I do believe that that is not the best bet to make, because SoundHound has been proving a lot of the haters wrong this last year, as we have seen significant growths in the underlying company. So with SoundHound, we could see every single one of their earnings reports, they have beat expectations and came in with higher revenues, right? So we have been having accelerating revenue, with their next quarterly expected to be their largest ever, right? So that is massive to see. They have also improved when it comes to earnings per share. And something else to think about with SoundHound in the early days of SoundHound, right? So when their revenue wasn't as much as it is now, they had one customer account for 90% of their revenue. Now they don't have one customer that accounts for more than 10% of their revenue. So this company is working with a ton of other companies. And when we talk about the future with AI, technology, everything like that, SoundHound plays into that future perfectly, because there are so many companies that don't want to have employees on the phone, right? They don't want to waste the time by having employees jibber jabber when they could just put an AI on the line. And I know not everybody is in favor for that, because it is nice to have a human connection when you talk on the phone, but you have to think about what a lot of these big companies are looking to do, and that is to save time and also save on payroll. So that's just one type of way that SoundHound can, help other businesses, is on the telephone, but also they work a lot with the restaurant industry. So this helps with the drive-through and everything like that. And SoundHound has picked up a lot of big players the last year. So let's just take a look. Let's go over to SoundHound's website here, and let's take a look at some of the companies that they work for, because they do have somewhere on here. Let's take a look. Okay, so these are a lot of the big brands that are using SoundHound. So we can see BBVA, Hyundai, Kia, we have Pandora, Chipotle, and that is massive also, because there has been the theory that SoundHound in the future could start working with McDonald's, and that would be a massive move. And if you know anything about Chipotle, as an investor, McDonald's owns a ton of Chipotle, right? So this does put SoundHound in a favorable position to work with the largest fast food chain out there. And again, this company is constantly growing. We see their revenue accelerating. And then when we just talk about technical analysis, I love where we are currently at, and I consider for this to be a great zone to accumulate within SoundHound. And again, this is a very volatile stock with a small market cap and a high short interest. So with QE being implemented, if SoundHound starts to pick up some momentum with the macros and everything else going on, and the underlying company continues to prove themselves, we could see a massive rip up within SoundHound. So I am very bullish on this company, especially where it is currently at, still under that 52-week high that we saw all the way back in 2024. So I'm very bullish on SoundHound. I'm also very bullish on this company. We just talked about it yesterday. That is BIGBEAR AI. And so BIGBEAR yesterday had a massive rip up, as we could see by this thick green candlestick here. But today, again, just like the rest of the market, and the same to be said with SoundHound, basically just flat movements. We really didn't see too much. This candlestick shows that neither the bulls or the bears did take control of the markets today. But again, that is completely okay with me, because when we look at the macros, there is a lot to be positive about right now. And also when we look at BIGBEAR, there is also a lot to be positive about. So I was recently just talking about these spots here when we tap on the 200-day moving average, and how I consider for this to be an accumulation zone. So I accumulated at these spots most recently with BIGBEAR AI. Now I do expect for the bullish momentum to continue within BIGBEAR, but there is always the possibility that we do get some more sideways movement moving in to that next big FOMC meeting on Wednesday. So right now things are a bit unpredictable, and again, I wouldn't put it past the markets to have some flat days overall leading up to that meeting on Wednesday, because right now the markets already have baked in the expectations that the Federal Reserve does cut, But the really important part with the next big FOMC meeting is going to be what Jerome Powell says. And so it's important to know whether or not we get this current cut, but then also what Jerome Powell has to say. And right now, for me, Big Bear AI is just kind of a wait and see opportunity. But again, this is because I have already loaded up with Into the Big Bear. So I'm very excited for the future with this company. Again, I have a lot of options contracts, a lot of leaps that go into 2026 and 2027. But with this wait and see approach, I feel this with most of the markets right now, at least with how Friday finished. But again, I am already prepared in a lot of these opportunities, and I have been most recently buying the dip. But we'll just have to see how the markets react leading up to the FOMC on Wednesday. So I'm very bullish on the entire markets, but in the short term, anything is possible. Potentially a lot of volatility leading up to this next meeting next week. We're also going to talk here about quantum. Quantum today had a bit of a red day, as we could see QBTS down by 5%, but that is completely okay with me because we just recently had a massive rip back up in quantum. So we saw yesterday a massive day. All these quantum stocks were up by 10+%. This sector is very volatile. So seeing about a 6% drop, not too surprising with this sector. And again, right now I am just waiting and seeing what is going to happen next. With QBTS though, I like where we are currently at. And with the recent push that we saw, we have entered into a new layer of support and resistance. And so this at one point, pretty hard resistance. This was a strong resistance through a lot of the year. Right now sitting as the support within QBTS. I also was looking at Rigetti today, another decently red day within Rigetti, but again, just like QBTS, just like all the quantum plays, just like most plays in the markets, I like what we are seeing in terms of technical analysis. Quantum could really run like crazy, and with this administration, we never know when we'll get maybe a push for quantum, right? We just saw yesterday the Trump administration came out saying that we may see some executive orders with robotics. Trump has already pushed so much for AI. And also we have quantum here, which could have a big push from the presidency at some point. As right now, there is a big race with quantum between all these United States companies, but then also between the United States and China. So a lot of true value within this quantum sector. I am looking at QBTS. I am looking at Rigetti. I am also looking at quantum computing, QUBT, which did have a pretty big push the other day, also very low on all of these indicators. And so I am looking at all of these different assets as well as many others. But I would be curious to hear what everyone else thinks in the comments section below. So please drop a comment. Please let me know if you are bullish on SoundHound, if you are bullish on Big Bear AI, or any of these quantum stocks or robotics. I didn't really talk too much about robotics today, but I'm also very bullish on that sector and the entire AI sphere. But I would love to hear what you all have to say. So please drop that comment. Please leave a like and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you in the next video.